Hi, this is Len. Welcome to the Kindle Chronicles. Today is November 6th, 2020, and we are still at Ocean Park, Maine, although on Monday we will head back to Cambridge after having been here for 8 months for the pandemic. So it's been a long stay at this beautiful spot on the coast of southern Maine. My interview this week is with David Blum, who is the editor-in-chief of Audible Originals, and this has been a nice new project for David, who's been on the show a couple of times before when he was running Kindle Singles. 10 years ago, he left a position in he had a varied career in New York publishing, and Amazon hired him 10 years ago and to start up this new Kindle Singles feature on the Kindle. And for the past 4 years, he's been doing a similar project at Audible. So it gives a chance to see what Audible's up to, and also kind of see the trajectory of somebody who took a chance on Amazon 10 years ago, and it has led to a lot of really creative activity. And I think I was glad to hear that David is still very engaged and very much thinking that he made the right move 10 years ago when he made that shift. We'll have some news about Amazon's electric vans, which are on the horizon, a few tech tips and comments, and then I'm going to give you a taste of the thought of Kevin Kelly, who's going to be my guest next week. I've already recorded the show, and he's got a YouTube video called The Future of Global Convergence that toward the end of the show I'm going to give you a taste of that in preparation for hearing him on next week's show. Let's get started. There was a news story I saw this week that Jeff Bezos had sold, I think, $3 billion worth of Amazon stock. And this is kind of old news in my view because he has a regular routine of selling Amazon stock, and I think it just gets sold on a specific date, so he's not in any way timing it. And he uses the money to pump into Blue Origin to work on his space exploration. So Amazon continues to provide funds for that part of his life mission. In the news story I did want to talk about, I've spotted references to these Rivian Vans, which are electric vans. It's a company in California, and Amazon is a part owner of it. And Amazon has also committed to buying 100,000 of these vans to use for delivering products. And 10,000 of those are scheduled to be on the road by 2022. There was a story that I'll have a link to in the show notes showing one of these vans and showing some drivers looking at them. And it's kind of fun because they're designed from the ground up not only to be all electric with some semi-autonomous highway and traffic assist driving, 360-degree exterior cameras, a lot of that kind of technology, but designed with the delivery person in mind. There's a little video that I like. It's a woman driver, and she sits in the driver's seat of it, and there's a big screen, kind of like a Tesla, and she says, "I feel like I'm sitting in the future." And this is a pretty major commitment on Amazon's part, and if they go true to form on other long-term development things like drone delivery, which has been worked on, I don't know if that's been at least 5 years now, maybe more, closer to 10. When something like this gets set up, they are relentless in bringing it to fruition. And so I think this is something that we probably will see on the horizon. Tom Semple sent me an interesting reference to the Rivian Vans. He said, "I became aware of Rivian from the current Apple TV Plus series Long Way Up, which is a sequel to Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman's Long Way Round and Long Way Down motorcycle adventures, also available from Apple TV Plus. This time they travel from the southern tip of South America to Los Angeles using prototype electric Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And the support vehicles include 2 prototype Rivian SUVs. Much recommended." I took a peek at this, and I'll have a link in the show notes, and it's an amazing trip. I mean, they go, 16,000 miles from the tip of South America all the way to Los Angeles, and they're riding these electric Harley-Davidson motorcycles, trying to figure out where they're going to charge them all through the trip. And I didn't see any of the vans in the part I was watching just now, but it's a pretty good road test that their Rivian Vans are getting in this particular show, and pretty soon they'll have a little less extreme duty delivering packages for Amazon. I've got a few tech tips for you I'd like to share. One is an update to my experience with the Freewrite Traveler. This is a dedicated keyboard designed pretty strictly for generating a first draft of a piece of writing. And so it's very limited in what it can do. You can't just sort of hop around the document and edit and cut and paste big sections. There's a backspace key, and you can go back word by word. Well, I tried this out on an actual piece of writing, and the way the setting was, I was working on training and helping people make phone calls to Colorado for the campaign on the day before Election Day and Election Day. And so there were periods of time when I was looking at a Zoom Hollywood Squares panel of the volunteers who were making their calls, and I was supposed to be available for helping people out if they had tech difficulty. So a fair amount of downtime, and I thought I'm just going to type out sort of what I'm doing contemporaneously with the doing of it using the Traveler. So I wasn't sure if anything would come of it. I was writing in a very free way. I was enjoying it. I was describing what I was seeing on the screen and, thinking like an essay. But because of the way this machine prompts you, you don't feel like you're doing anything finished. And you can only see just, a few lines on the screen. It's a very small window. So it's as if the text is kind of flowing out of your mind into your fingers, and then it's sort of disappearing. You can't see most of a page that you've written. When I got through with it, and I included some thoughts as we were watching the election returns coming in Tuesday night, I thought, let's see if this is something that I can turn into an essay on Medium. So I fetched the version of this in the cloud. There's an area where the Traveler puts your stuff by Wi-Fi, copied it, pasted it into Scrivener, and then I did some editing. Well, it was editable. I was able last night to work maybe for an hour on it, tightening it up, fixing typos, moving things around. And by the time I was done, it felt finished enough, and I read it to Darlene. She thought it sounded good. So I published it last night on Medium. And the benefit that I got from this test was if I had, first of all, I couldn't have used my computer because I was using it for Zoom, so having a separate keyboard was good. And just the sort of the low stakes of writing as I was doing this activity using this first draft keyboard, this first draft writer's tool, enabled me to put down, I guess maybe close to 1,000 words. I'm not sure how long an essay it turned out to be. And I captured it. And if I had to recreate it and gone back and tried to remember what it was like, I never would have written the essay. So it had the desired effect of drawing out of me a first draft, which, but for this particular tool, I might just never have even attempted. So pretty interesting, and I'm in touch with the company. It's based in Detroit. It's a startup, and I'm hoping that week after next I'm going to be able to do an interview with one of the co-founders and get a little more insight into how they designed this tool, not just for writers, but for writers working on a first draft. It was pretty good. Two more tech tips involving Alexa. I have one of the new Echoes, which is a round ball. This replaces kind of the big tennis ball carrier or can. And, I guess I like it better than the can. It's shorter, but it's pretty big. It's bigger than the Magic 8 Ball. It has really good sound, and so that I like. But on my desk here, I've got an Echo Show, sort of the mid-size screen on the right side of the desk, and the Echo on the left side of the desk. And I would sort of play the Echo when I wanted good music, and I've been going back and forth. And then I had the idea, I think I can connect these two things, so I'm playing them both at the same time. And I found a video online that walked me through it. It was pretty simple. It was a setup based on, the Alexa app and going in and finding devices. And then there's a place where you create a speaker group. And I called it Upstairs. So now when I say, Alexa, play Beach Boys on Upstairs, one of the devices answers, but the music comes out of both of them. And I don't think it's stereo. I think it's probably just mono coming out of each of them. But it's a nice full sound here on the desk, and a good way to get these two speakers working together. You can also set up the speakers so that all the speakers in the house or all the speakers in a room, if there are more than one room. So if you've started to collect, more than one of these Echo devices, there are ways to help them to play music, especially together, in a way that is pretty nice. You don't have to be buying new speakers. You just connect all of the Echo speakers that you've got. Another thing regarding Alexa, I have heard reports from some of you have sent me emails saying, I can't hear the Morning Journal, which is my flash briefing, just by saying, Alexa, what's new? And that has been the way I've heard the Morning Journal up until today. And this time when I said, I put up the new one and I wanted to test it, so I said, Alexa, what's new? And I got a long message saying, you need to set up which news sources you want to go with your news feed. And that's the point where I realized that on my device now, finally, there has been a separation from flash briefings, which is what my Morning Journal is, and this sort of new news feed, which they're setting up. So you can create a news feed of Fox or BBC, NPR. So when you say, Alexa, what's new, she's automatically going to tell you, sort of actual news as opposed to news made by an individual creator like me. Now, it turns out very easy to find the Morning Journal, and Dad sent me a text saying, hey, what happened? I said, what's new? And I got a bunch of gobbledygook about news channels. And I said, well, try saying, Alexa, what is my flash briefing? And that solved it. He was able to hear it. So going forward on my devices, and I suspect this is going to be rolling out to everybody, if you're getting the Morning Journal and in the past you've been able to get it by saying, Alexa, what's new, you'll have to change and say, Alexa, what's my flash briefing? Time now for the interview. David Blum earned a BA degree in English literature from the University of Chicago in 1977, and then established himself in New York as a journalist, editor, and book author. He began his career at the Wall Street Journal, became associate editor of Esquire in 1983, went on to work at New York Magazine and then the New York Times Magazine, followed by his serving as editor-in-chief for the Village Voice. Along the way, he published 2 books, Flash in the Pan, The Life and Death of an American Restaurant, and Tick, 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 The Long Life and Turbulent Times of 60 Minutes. In 2010, this literary star in New York joined Amazon as founding editor of something called Kindle Singles. He moved to Audible in 2016 as editor-in-chief of Audible Originals. And I wanted to talk to David again to learn what he's doing at Audible, to get caught up with him. So we connected by Skype between Ocean Park and his home in New York City on Tuesday, October 27th. Here is our conversation. I thought it would be fun since you were the founding editor of Kindle Singles, and when you look back on that, just about 10 years ago, isn't it? Wasn't it?
Yes, almost exactly. It's 10 this coming January.
What's your overall memory? What's the most satisfying aspect of the fact that you said yes to kind of an unlikely proposition to leave the New York publishing world and all the things you've done and go off to Amazon and be the beginner of something called Kindle Singles? The way it turned out, how did it leave you feeling?
Well, wonderful. Honestly, I was a pretty, in retrospect, and I don't think I even realized it at the time, just how early I was to, the long journey that Amazon has taken in the content business. They had just begun in the movie business. Amazon Publishing was being born. Kindle Singles started, and a lot of things were happening. For me, the commitment that Kindle Singles had to long-form writing that fit in this kind of wonderful in between space that publishers ignored and magazines, became kind of an ongoing mantra that has continued even into my new role at Audible, where we're exploring shorter length projects and allowing writers to, the motto of Kindle Singles, which I still think is applicable anywhere, compelling ideas expressed at their natural length. That applies equally to audio as well. So in a way, honestly, the last 10 years have all been an extremely consistent thread of commitment to this form of, long form storytelling. So I'm honestly amazed and thrilled that I've been able to continue to do essentially the same kind of thing, though in different parts of this kind of exploding digital media space.
Were you the first editor-in-chief for Audible Originals?
Yes. Audible had also had some history with original content all the way back to having done a podcast with Robin Williams in, I think, 2002, which may have been one of the very first podcasts ever, a weekly show that he interviewed people, and it was hilarious. I've heard episodes.
Wow.
And they did one with Ricky Gervais, and then they did a number of other projects that were not, strictly speaking, audiobooks, and they were very successful. But they had never really made a formal commitment to building a brand around original content until roughly around 2015, 16. And I joined in 2016 in the fall.
It's sort of cool that you had a chance to be sort of the creating person to really get serious about both of those content platforms, Kindle Singles and Audible Originals. You're sort of giving writers and creators a new length to deal with in both areas. Did you kind of port some of the things you learned maybe the hard way from Kindle Singles when you said, okay, now I get to do this again in Audible, and now I'm a little smarter for what I went through the first time?
I hope so. I mean, I was very fortunate actually in both instances to honestly really be following the lead of the people who had created the ideas. In the case of Kindle Singles, it was Jeff Bezos and Russ Grandinetti, who together essentially dreamed it up. And then I was just fortunate enough to get to lead it. And similarly at Audible, Don Katz, who I'd known for a very long time as a magazine writer, and we became good friends over the years, had built this extraordinary business over about a 20-year period that really was, by the time I joined, hugely, dominant and successful. And of course, Don himself is a writer and is very committed to original work and committed obviously to audio. So it seemed exciting for me, fortuitous to be able to do what I had done in Kindle in an entirely new medium that I had never worked in before.
Did this all get hatched over a beer someplace in Manhattan?
I wish I could say I was even present. Neither one of the ideas was hatched with me in the room.
Somebody said, "Get Dave."
Yeah, he's good with the things that we hatch up. Which honestly, really, I always had to say that when I talked about Kindle Singles, was just to remind people I did not dream this up. I wish I could take credit for it. And similarly, Audible Originals, or even honestly audio. I mean, as Don will remember from when we first, in 1995, when he founded Audible and shared it with me, I didn't own a car and I didn't quite get it because I didn't really see the need for it. But, obviously I've figured it out since. But, he was way ahead of his time, frankly, and really developed something that became, very much now a vibrant part of book publishing and storytelling and innovation and creativity in ways that I don't think anyone could have imagined. Honestly, I think even 5 years ago, if you had said, podcasts were growing rapidly, but still Serial happened in 2014. It's not that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was really the transformative moment for audio was Serial, obviously, and the success there inspired a lot of people and talent. So, we've been very fortunate, and people are excited to do this.
Oh, yeah.
So it's fun to be involved.
Who was the first one within Amazon to let you know that they decided to have you take Audible Originals on?
Well, Audible Originals, that actually was between Don and me, and so we then went to Amazon and got there.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, we because we had known each other for a long time, and it just seemed like a good moment to try something new. And there were plenty of people at Amazon who continued to lead and have in the Amazon Publishing and Kindle single space.
Yeah.
So everybody was fine with it. And I mean, it's one big company.
Yeah.
Obviously, in that sense, even though Audible is very distinct and special in its own way, and shares a lot with Amazon, but also has a unique corporate culture, and which was appealing to me. And also, I'd always been working for people on the West Coast, so it was nice to be
in the same time zone.
Yes, and I had spent very little time in Newark, but I've gotten to know Newark as well, at least until March. But Audible, as you may know, has a huge commitment to Newark, to the rebuilding and improving of Newark, and involves all of its employees in that effort. And it's really an exciting component, really, of working there. And honestly, for the artists we work with are interested and attracted to that side of what we do, and especially at a time when we're all going through so much difficulty.
Yeah, and that comes right out of Don Katz's passion for being a corporate citizen. I knew it was a long shot, but when HQ2 was being shopped around and Newark was one of the possibilities.
Yes.
Damn, that'd be a story if, you have Audible transforming Newark, and then it gets to be one of the Amazon headquarters. But, I mean, even Audible itself has got to have a huge presence there at this point, pre-pandemic.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. It would have been exciting, but look, Amazon has a large footprint, pretty much everywhere at this point. Certainly in New York, and they're very closely aligned.
Yeah. Well, now there was a part. It looked like there was an overlap toward the end of your Kindle singles time when you were also editor-in-chief at Little A, the literary imprint at Amazon Publishing. Anything significant happened there, or is any particular surprises that you ended up being able to bring into print while you were holding that hat?
I was not there that long. It's a wonderful team, and they're still in place and producing really cool books. Honestly, I was just always very excited to be in the digital side of book publishing. I myself, as an author, had been involved in the print side of it all, because my books were published. My second book was published in 2004, and the other one in the 90s. So I really missed the Kindle era and certainly the audio. So for me, it was really exciting to be. It was just a continuation, really, of what I've learned at Kindle Singles and now at Audible. That there's people. This device that we're talking through right now, the phone, has such a powerful, transformative effect on how people consume content. And I just liked being on it or in it, or whatever the appropriate word is. Working on content that people access through their phone. It meant that they could be engaged at any moment with words and voice, in the case of Audible, and and emotion, which is really the key component of everything, is my view of both with singles and books and Audible Originals, stories that reach people's emotional level. And audio has a particular ability to do that. It's so intimate. It's in your ears. It's the closest that content can get to your brain, basically. And to me, that can't be accidental as part of the equation of why it's successful. because frankly, the ability to be able to have that experience while you're walking down the street or at the grocery store or at the gym, commuting, those are, and what's been really exciting is to see artists respond to that. I worked on a project this year with Jesse Eisenberg, the actor, and well, I shouldn't just call him the actor. He's also a brilliant playwright and now author. He had done a collection of short stories, but we asked him if he wanted to do anything, and he had this idea for what originally was going to be a relatively short piece of fiction, and it expanded into a three-part, three monologues of three different actors. He was one of them. He ended up casting. It's a family story about a father, a mother, and a son, and the son is played by Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, and the wife is played by Caitlin Dever from Unbelievable and many other movies.
And Jesse was Zuckerberg in the
yes, famously Oscar nominated for The Social Network.
Yeah,
which was such an amazing movie. David Fincher just described it. I thought that was so funny as the Citizen Kane of John Hughes movies. I just thought that was so perfect.
That sums it up.
It really is. And Jesse Eisenberg, I think, can never quite escape. He hates it. People are always saying, "So you'll promote this on Facebook, right?" Ha ha. Because he has no Facebook or any other social media. But anyway, it was a very exciting thing because he really thought long and hard about the audio of it all. And really, he came in and we did a reading where he read all the parts, just sitting around the table and took notes there. And, very, very much thinking about the listening experience. And as a result, ended up really writing something. It's called When You Finish Saving the World. It had, tremendous impact. But that, we've done a lot of, I think, really cool things that take audio and differentiate from what you can get on the podcast app or even in audiobooks, and trying to present really, we're doing a series called Words and Music where we're getting great musicians to not so much just say, this is where I wrote that song sitting on a bus, wherever.
Yeah.
But more really telling life stories. And James Taylor did one called Break Shot that was about his teen years when he was addicted to drugs.
I love that one.
Yeah, really.
Was that the first one? Was Taylor's the first?
The second one. The first one was Patti Smith, who, had great experience telling stories in her books.
Right.
And in her concerts, but sort of putting it together in a 90-minute show, which we actually produced live at the Minetta Lane, was really, and recorded it there, was just truly thrilling. So she was the first, James Taylor. And now we have, just yesterday we launched Alanis Morissette. We've had Sheryl Crow, Common, Tom Morello. We have Elvis Costello coming. Just a lot of really interesting, cool artists talking about their lives, not so much their work, but the intermingling of their work and their lives. T-Bone Burnett, who's been producing some of them for us, did in his own original about growing up in the South. And the racial divide that he observed sort of firsthand. So it's really people telling stories. We're very much about storytelling, and in that sense, nothing's changed from 10 years ago.
Right.
I've always believed in the power of storytelling, and the audio world is now filled with everything from storytelling to chat shows to people reconstructing old crimes and all that stuff. So we're trying to be really, faithful to our belief in the power of narrative and whether, memoir works very well for us. Obviously we didn't publish it, but Michelle Obama's Becoming was a gigantic audio success. Because, why would you read it if you have the chance to have Michelle Obama in your ears,
exactly
telling you that story?
Well, and I read something about the Eisenberg piece. It's a edgy, fascinating story, as I understand it. I listened to some of the first part of it. It's a father who's got some ambivalence about being a father and the relationship
That's right.
to the child. And he said the internal struggle of a character who is emotionally a bit stifled seemed
right.
perfect for the medium of audio drama. And I thought that was interesting, that he would see audio as perfect for a character who was having trouble getting in touch with their emotions, expressing their emotions. I wasn't sure I understood that, but why did he think that that would fit so well with an audio format?
Well, I just think he felt that, and I think he turned out to be right, and where it's the power of the words and the emotion behind the words that's really driving the story, as opposed to what the character is doing, let's say, or what he or she might look like, is, going to work best in audio. For somebody like Michelle Obama, we already know what she looks like. We've seen her, we've heard her talk, but so it's an easy leap in a way then to have. And actually, Jesse has that advantage too, because he has many distinguishing features, but his voice is certainly one of them.
Oh yeah.
And I think people just enjoy it. There are certain people just really like to listen to in audio, and that's kind of the core of the rest of our business, is just these audiobook narrators that we have who our customers love. Sometimes they come for the narrator.
Yeah.
What's such and such so and so narrated lately?
Yeah.
Because I just like having him in my ears.
That's right. It doesn't matter. I don't like mysteries. I like listening to his voice.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if you went to the bookstore and said, "What do you have in Helvetica font?"
That's right.
Because I like reading Helvetica. It doesn't exist in any other medium. That's kind of the joy of it, is that you can actually have an emotional connection or creative connection to the voice, even if the voice it didn't create it.
There's so much emotional information that just comes in the voice that even the best writer doesn't have access to that tool.
Exactly. So that's been for me one of the biggest journeys of the last 4 years, is realizing that I'm working on some level for, there's an entertainment element to this business that there wasn't in print or that you actually are trying to entertain people. Once we as I think we've been doing theater before the pandemic, producing live theater, music, other kinds of performance. We had Dan Rather at the Minetta Lane telling stories from his early years. That was really actually an extraordinary evening, and has been a very successful Audible original. So just things that you wouldn't be able to consume in any other way. These sort of 90-minute, 2-hour-long people telling stories. Somebody described it as sort of we're publishing the best chapter of every memoir, which is kind of a funny way to think of it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get a memoir and you're like, I don't really care about their teen years. I'll skim that part to get to the meat of it. Sometimes the teen years are the meat of it, but it's like with James Taylor. So you never know, but it really is, a performance-driven business in many ways, or medium.
Well, I can imagine when you have a project, like say, I don't know if this would apply to Michael Lewis, because I listened to that amazing one that he did about the Playing to Win. Oh,
Playing to Win, the new one, yes.
Yeah, but emerging youth sports industrial complex. But so he's probably done this before. But if you've got an author and you've got a project for Audible Singles, how do you coach someone who hasn't expressed themselves in this medium to be comfortable with it, or to take full advantage of it? What are some of the tips that you give?
Well, it's interesting, because I did work with Michael on the first one he did, which was about the National Weather Service, called The Coming Storm. It ended up in his book, The Fifth Risk. First of all, he had, believe it or not, for all of his books and many, many bestsellers, he had never read his own work in audio. They had always hired an actor. And, Michael has a great voice and is extremely charismatic, and, people know him. It just seemed like, what a waste. So we had him narrate, which he really enjoyed doing. He recorded in some studio in Berkeley where there were, Fleetwood Mac had recorded there. So, whatever. It's just like a really cool, it's fun for authors, to get out of the house and do something like that. But also he was, initially we were thinking of various sound effects related to weather, but I think we kind of realized that sometimes the words themselves are powerful enough. So one of the things we've been thinking a lot about and trying to assess is, when is it appropriate to add music or soundscape or special effects, and when is it simply enough to just have the words be the sound effects? And I think that's actually one of the biggest questions facing audio now. Is, we have the technology to produce really highly evolved and developed audio, but should we? Often the answer is yes, but sometimes the answer is no, and we're just trying to make this a smart answer for each piece of content.
Well, and I think Playing to Win, am I right that doesn't have anything other than Michael reading that story?
It's just straight voice, and as I said, he's talking about his daughter, personal. It'd be crazy to have somebody else read it. Honestly, I think he should, it's just amazing that he never said, "Hey, I want to read my books." I want to read Moneyball. Because he had such a personal connection to that as well. But having the author read, if possible, or when it's appropriate, we do like to encourage it, because it does help, I think, the listener's connection to the material.
Yeah, I mean, my experience, because, I love his writing, and I've read a lot of his writing. It's so powerful. But I could see the power of an Audible creation for him because of how he talked about his daughter. And when he's talking about his daughter and moving through this business of youth sports and softball, she's a terrific player and all that, you can hear the pride, you can hear the anxiety, and that colors and really dramatizes all of the data that he collects about how huge this industry is and the moral dilemmas and all that. It's somehow turbocharged by the fact that his daughter lived through it, and he keeps bringing her in so skillfully. I mean, you get to see her story, and you kind of can't wait for the next time for her to appear. And meanwhile, you're that much more into the other story he's telling. So it seemed like sort of a perfect match.
Yeah, it really was. Honestly, I mean, I don't think it gets any better than Michael Lewis in sort of nonfiction, that kind of journalism. He's outstanding. I mean, and to me, it's been such a thrill and honor to have him working for us and doing projects for us. That's honestly been, again, part of the fun that I had at Kindle Singles has transferred to Audible, because this is a new platform for a lot of people. They want to try this out in the same way that they, I was able to, get Christopher Hitchens was the first major author we got to Kindle Singles, and the first author we got to do an Audible original was Robert Caro. And I always thought there was kind of a weird symmetry there. Not that obviously they're very different people, but both hugely influential and important authors who were just like, yeah, that sounds like fun. Both of them fairly on in years, and really you would think locked in. I mean, especially Caro, he's done nothing but books, but he was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And he had a great time. And also, he was somebody who most people aren't aware that Robert Caro has a very thick Brooklyn accent and is a very funny talker. So he was hearing his voice for the first time, because, again, he was somebody whose books were always narrated by somebody else. Yeah. Nobody knew, really, or very few anyway. So it ended up being quite successful. So, that was really fun. It's thrilling to be able to work with, literary heroes.
Well, have you got any in the pipeline that you can talk about as coming attractions, or?
What do we have? I don't know when this is. I'm so bad at that. We have stuff coming out so.
Yeah, well, you better not
to keep track.
Yeah,
I don't want to get it wrong in terms of the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, the one thing I will say is we've launched this new business, Audible Plus, which is another tier of our membership.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about that, because I went off my regular Audible membership because I kept getting credits, and I didn't have a commute. I was sort of like you, and so they had this thing where I could keep a hand in on an annual membership of some kind. But I saw that in August now, for $7.95 a month, I get this Audible Plus membership. Right. Now, one question is, as part of that, every time you do an Audible original and all the past Audible originals, are they all available to me through my Audible Plus membership?
Most. I mean, I don't know what the exact percentage is, and we've done some that are audio books length and remain in the store for a credit.
I see.
And then, but a lot of the shorter content, most of the shorter, both the podcast-like content or podcast content and the shorter originals that we've been talking about, like Jesse Eisenberg, and those are available free.
And I could probably find like that Dan Rather one you mentioned would be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's available for free if you're what we call a Premium Plus member, which is paying $14.95 a month for one free audiobook a month. And in addition to that, you get all the content in Audible Plus. Yeah. And then similarly, for $7.95, you get all the content in Audible Plus, which is something I think on the order of 80,000+ hours of content. So there's a tremendous amount of variety and quality, if I can be so bold. I do think there's some good things in there.
Yeah. Is it available overseas or just in the U.S.?
That's just available in the U.S. at this time.
Okay.
But we were very much of a global content business, and most, the vast majority of our content is available globally.
Right.
We have, in multiple countries.
Yeah. Having, done my own podcast for a while, I'm curious, what's the difference between a podcast and an Audible original series? There's one like Mother, Allison Stevenson, Susie Eisman. It comes out and, there's a series of episodes, but is it a podcast or is it a series? How do you know the difference?
I'm going to defer to somebody. That is one of the eternal questions of our time. It's like a metaphysical question. I mean, a podcast is really a technical term for how it's delivered. Actually, it doesn't even signify specifically a piece of kind of content.
True.
But it's come to be seen as episodic content, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's released on a weekly cadence. It could be, with various podcasts drop all their episodes at once.
Yeah.
So it's not even related to that. And it's really, there are now more than 1 million of them available. So you're talking about a vast number of things across pretty much all formats, all shapes.
I've seen a number of attempts by different people to kill the term podcast just because it's, it doesn't describe much, and it seems to be as durable as the word blog that people didn't like either. It seems stuck in the language for a while.
It's here to stay, I think. Yeah. I apologize. I have to go. I have a 10:30 meeting. I hope we covered what
we have. This has been awesome, and let's see. We
can always circle back if there's something,
No, this is good. This is a half an hour, which is what it usually is. So fantastic. I can't wait to see what the third new platform you bring to the creative people of the world is in 10 years. I'm going to put on my calendar to find out what you'll be peddling then.
Let's just hope I can still be at this one. All right. Thanks so much,
care.
Len. Great to talk to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I want to mention an item in content, and it is an episode of Pete Buttigieg's Defining Decade podcast that I listened to yesterday. It's an interview with Jonathan Alter, who has a new biography of Jimmy Carter out. And it was there was a meta layer to the conversation, which had to do with the fact that Pete is on Biden's transition team. And Pete is ostensibly asking about ideas that Alter has formed about different presidents that he's written about, and also Jimmy Carter. And he's asking, well, how would you advise Joe Biden to handle a Republican Congress or Senate, a Republican Senate, which is the most likely scenario at this point? So Alter thinks deeply, and he weighs in with what I thought were some very constructive ways, comparing the opportunities that FDR had when he came into office, and some ways similar circumstances to what Biden would be coming into office. But he knew that he was talking to a member of the transition team and somebody who no doubt has Biden's ear as he was giving this advice on how to
handle Mitch McConnell. So I think Pete is a fantastic interviewer, and he had really dug into this book about Jimmy Carter, and I thought his questions resulted in a very lively and intelligent conversation. So that's highly recommended. I want to include a couple of comments. Shimon Schott wrote me on November 2nd. Dear Len, I'd like to share with you my experience with two alternative reading methods which I've been trying out. Both are hybrid methods combining print with audio. First, I've augmented reading a book on my Kindle by having Alexa read it to me. This helped me get through a book faster by, quote, reading it in my car or when cleaning my home. The synchronization between Kindle and Alexa worked flawlessly, which is great, as it would be more difficult to find your place in the book with Alexa, i.e. you can't quickly scan the text. Alexa's pronunciation was very good, though not flawless. For example, she read molten lead as molten lead. Also, she didn't change her intonation at the end of a chapter. I think flaws such as these can be easily fixed. However, this method works only in books without dialogue, which is much harder to follow in audio form as Alexa doesn't do voices. Adding unique voices is definitely a larger challenge. The second method involved combining reading a paperback with listening to the audiobook narrated by a professional narrator. Obviously, I had to sync manually. This was an interesting experience and an opportunity to work on my pronunciation. However, I had to speed up the audiobook as my reading speed is faster than a typical audiobook narrator. To summarize, both methods allowed me to immerse myself in a single book. If you know of other hybrid methods, I'd love to try them out. Best, Shimon. P.S. Alexa's mistake is an example of what made Jimmy Page spell his band's name Led Zeppelin instead of using the correct spelling of Lead Zeppelin. So that's Shimon Schott from Krakow, Poland. Interesting hybrid reading possibilities and a way to learn a language or just take in a book or a story in kind of two channels. I think that's just that intrigues me to think of a story reaching my mind in text, and then if I'm listening to it at the same time, then that works out pretty well too. Tom Semple, in addition to what he wrote about that Apple TV story about the Rivian van, he said, great interview with Stephen Levy. I don't think I'll ever have time to read the Investigation of Competition and Digital Markets report in detail, and no doubt there are some good points in there, but the focus on anti-competitive practices seems monomaniacal and ignores whatever benefits consumers enjoy as a result of better integration of services, etc. These companies are large because a lot of people like the products and services they provide. Their shareholders are very happy as well. Best, Tom. Well said. I think that's Stephen Levy has written from that point of view, and I share it. Big companies have to be looked at, but I think singling out big tech is a little misguided and a little warped by the political aspects of it. Next week's guest is going to be Kevin Kelly, co-founder of Wired Magazine. I've already recorded the conversation with Kevin, and in it he talks about how he is shifting a lot of his creative activity to YouTube, and he has a very active YouTube channel where I found a lecture video that he had recorded in 2019. It was commissioned by China Mobile, and so it's a series of 36 lectures, part of an online course. And this first one, or the most recent one that's been posted, is titled The Future of Global Convergence. I'm going to just play the start of it to give you a taste for what it sounds like, and then I'll tell you a little bit more.
Hello. Today I want to talk about global convergence. This is cultural convergence. This is this idea that the direction that we're headed as a society, as a civilization, as humans on this planet in the next 25 years is towards a unity. So at one level, we are making a single virtual machine on the planet. We're connecting all our electronic devices to each other. All the phones in the world can communicate to each other. All the desktop, laptops, iPads. servers, and in fact, as we put the Internet of Things, more and more mechanical devices from a coffee, refrigerator, your car, all these things are being connected together, and that connection kind of forms a large virtual machine, one machine.
This lecture is 16 minutes long. It's very informal. It simply shows Kevin facing the camera, kind of a headshot, and he is speaking perhaps with notes or teleprompter, but it's like he's thinking the ideas as he describes them. So it gives it a what I found to be an engaging, informal style. And the points that he makes are how the convergence that he sees in the world, it starts out with technology, and it involves the economy, climate, culture, and youth culture. And then he ends up with referencing Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that the things at the lower levels of needs are the things which are likely to converge over time, but that when you get up to the level of each of our search for meaning, then perhaps there is going to be some diversity, different stories, widely divergent, personal, and there'll be kind of a liberation of what happens at the higher levels. Very thoughtful look into the future, 25 years out. And in talking to Kevin and just, being a big fan of Wired Magazine and his other work, it's as if he's living in the future in some way. He reminds me of that driver in the Rivian van who's sitting there and saying, I feel like I'm sitting in the future. When Kevin looks out toward the horizon, there's a comfort and also a curiosity and a humility that goes with his explorations, which I find makes them very approachable and helps me to keep my mind open to some of the stunning ideas and things that he sees. I had a great conversation with him, and I'll look forward to sharing that with you next week. This is Len Edgerly for the Kindle Chronicles from Ocean Park, Maine. I really appreciate your taking the time to listen to my show. Have a great day. Bye.